In the season 7 episode, Lisa the Vegetarian, Ralph Wiggum eats the worm he was supposed to dissect, so Miss Hoover tells him to go to sleep while the rest of the children learn. At which point, Ralph says, "Oh boy, sleep. That's where I'm a Viking." This seemingly innocuous line of dialogue ignited a vigorous internet debate that has spanned 2 decades. The debate over whether Ralph literally dreams of being a Viking, or whether he is metaphorically describing he is awesome at sleeping. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of forum posts debating what this joke means. Why? So here's how your typical Ralph Viking argument goes on the internet. We're going to use this 2005 No Homers Club example for this exercise. Someone starts a thread asking, "Hey, there has been a discussion about what this quote means," and then lays out the 2 different interpretations. Number 1, it's literal, meaning he's a Viking in his dreams. Number 2, it's more of a metaphor, meaning he's good at sleep, conquers it like a Viking. Then we get a few different people chime in with their stances. The second one's funnier. Yeah, the second one. The first option never even entered my mind when I heard the line. I always presumed it was the second option. First one for sure. It's obviously the first one. He's Ralph. Number 1. Some people have a lot of time on their hands. Then inevitably, there reaches a point where a line is drawn in the sand. You are either a literal Viking person or a metaphorical Viking person. At the risk of sounding like a dick, this isn't open to interpretation. Ralph dreams of being a Viking. That's it. Stop trying to see things that aren't there. If he meant the conquering thing, he'd have said, "Oh boy, sleep, I'm a Viking at sleeping," or something. Why do people keep saying it's obvious? Quite clearly it isn't. I am amazed at how long this has been going on for, but it can't really be resolved one way or another, really. I just can't understand what would be funny about him dreaming he's a Viking. Why would that be remotely funny or clever? He's a little boy. He dreams of being a Viking. That's the kind of thing little kids dream about. Not particularly funny though, is it? And then we go around and around and around. Discussions of Ralph's personality, the wording of the phrase, and what Vikings were known for. At some point, someone always declares the joke ruined forever. Now, in the case of the No Homers Club, they got off the hook relatively easy, as the discussion died off after a mere 58 posts and was locked after a thread bump. The website Hipinion debated this in 2007 for over 400 posts spanning 17 pages, only 5 of which were archived. Then they came back in 2014 and argued about it for another 9 pages, and then again in 2018, 2020, and 2021. Yeesh. This example is pretty great in how this argument eventually became a thing, this long-running debate in the community. I feel like you can learn a lot about a community based on how they deal with the Ralph Viking debate. Something Awful discussed the different interpretations in 2020, for example, but mostly just memed on the concept for about 6 pages. My favorites are this one and this one and this one. Recetera took a less snarky approach in 2021, getting waist deep in Ralph Wiggum's psychology for 8 pages and nearly 400 posts. Back in 2007, Metafilter, one of the longest running online communities, managed to argue about this for 458 posts over the course of 10 days. Damn. And this is one of those archaic newsfeed type boards before avatars and individually separated posts. And then there's the website ILXOR. Oh my god, it keeps going and going and going. How is this happening? Why doesn't this argument ever burn itself out? Ah crap, they've started to divide into teams. Now they're blaming postmodernism. Now they're shitposting about Norse mythology and comparing Ralph to Odin. Literally years will pass in the same thread, and it will inevitably get resurrected again. And some of the same people are coming back a decade later to argue their same points about Ralph being good at sleep. 1,931 posts, 11 years, arguing about whether Ralph Wiggum dreams of being a Viking. I can't believe I read the whole thing. Someone even added "That's where I'm a Viking" to Urban Dictionary. We've reached the point where Viking can be used to describe an area you excel at, just because of this stupid joke. There is way more history to this debate. These are just some of the examples I was easily able to find on Google. I would bet you money that this came up on Usenet and alt.tv.simpsons, but hell if I could find it. So now that you have some historical context, let's get into the arguments themselves. We're going to determine once and for all whether Ralph is speaking literally or metaphorically. And most importantly, what is it about this line that sparks so much heated debate? Now, I'm going to be upfront with you all. I have always been on Team Literal, that Ralph dreams of being a Viking. I think it fits with his childish, enigmatic personality. That this is a kid who sees Snagglepuss outside, has a leprechaun that tells him to burn things, and goes on adventures with Wigglepuppy. Ralph would be excited about sleep because he can transform himself into something fantastical, in this case, a Viking. I agree with the idea that the disparity between sweet, gentle Ralph and the raiding and pillaging Vikings adds to the joke. Hell, you could argue that, given how much Ralph has been ostracized and bullied, that psychologically, becoming a powerful Viking would be appealing. Almost like escapism. And while it's true that Ralph uses a lot of non sequiturs and random humor, he almost never speaks figuratively. When Ralph says that he bent his Wookiee, he means he broke his Chewbacca figure. We laugh at how funny the line sounds, but that's simply what Ralph meant when he said that. I don't even think there's a history of Ralph being good at sleep. If anything, Ralph seems like a bedtime nightmare for his parents. This literal interpretation is, by far, the more popular one. It prevailed in ILX's poll with over 70% of the vote. Recetera's was even more lopsided, at 90% in favor with a sample size of 1,300 votes. It seems like the consensus is that Ralph dreams of being a Viking. That's it. So why do we have to keep doing this? Like, what is the counter-argument that most people seem to be missing? First, there's the context of the situation. This scene is a classic setup. Ralph is in class, and Hoover is getting on his case. He clearly just failed at his worm assignment, so in context, it makes sense that Ralph would respond by suggesting, "Oh boy, something I'm good at." We've seen this setup in so many episodes, where Hoover calls on him and Ralph fails. If Hoover's gonna suggest Ralph do something else, our brains are primed for Ralph to be excited about something he excels at. Secondly, while it's true that Vikings aren't exactly known for their sleeping abilities, they were known for being powerful conqueror types, known for raiding villages and leaving destruction in their wake. When you think of Vikings, you don't think of weakness. Like, we're talking about it in a sporty sense, that Ralph's crushing sleep, or is a badass at it, like a Viking. Not a Minnesota Viking, of course, I mean the historical ones. He crushes sleep so hard, he's like a Viking. Others have suggested that the joke is that Ralph has heard someone say this metaphor before, and that it's funnier that he associates Vikings with being good at sleep, implying a backstory that creates this nonsense line. Others argue that it's just another one of Ralph's patented non sequiturs. For example, he's not calling Chalmers a literal Super Nintendo, he's just mixed up and confused. It would not be that out of character for Ralph to just throw out something vaguely powerful like a Viking to associate being good at sleeping. It's adorable how Ralph thinks this is an idiom. In addition, it's not like the literal explanation makes total sense either. So we're saying that Ralph always dreams of being a Viking, he doesn't dream of other things? It's kinda weird to describe sleep as a place where you're one thing. As a loyal member of Team Literal, however, I would argue this makes the joke even funnier. I like the idea that Ralph inexplicably is always a Viking. Still, it's true that this literal interpretation isn't exactly subtle. If you're looking for this classic, really makes you think Simpsons humor, maybe it's funnier that Ralph thinks Vikings are good at sleep. On the other hand, there is a school of comedy that suggests that people Hey everyone, sorry about that. The argument seemed to be going around and around again. We're gonna cut the debate there. I think we get the gist of the two sides of the argument. When it comes down to it, the reason this line has become such a sticking point is because, frankly, English is a terribly designed language. Take any foreign language class as an English speaker and you immediately realize, wait a minute, English is a chaotic nightmare. The combination of the word sleep and the expression that's where creates this unclear situation. Are we saying that's where, like sleep is a place, or are we saying that's where, like sleep is an action? Technically, if we're talking about an action, Ralph should be saying, oh boy, sleeping. But it's not that uncommon in English to use these interchangeably when talking about activities. Oh boy, math. Oh boy, video games. Oh boy, football. That's where I'm a Washington football team. Interestingly, in several of the foreign language dubs, there is absolutely no ambiguity to this line. I consulted with Spanish, Italian, French, and German speakers, even getting clarification on the French-Canadian translation. Here are the lines in all four languages. And here's the rough Google translation of each. I also discussed this with each of my consultants to be certain that Google isn't just being terrible. And they all agree. In each of these dubs, Viking describes the act of sleeping, that Ralph sleeps like a Viking. In fact, the French version gets rid of Viking completely, just describing his strength at sleeping. As an English speaker, I am legitimately shocked that they all got translated this way, that it was never ever interpreted as Ralph dreaming of being a Viking. To be fair, the foreign language dubs are also a chaotic nightmare, with things being outright incorrect, or the timing of the mouth movements making things awkward. One of my German consultants said that this line is basically nonsense in his language because there is no expression sleeping like a Viking. It's not idiomatic. It's just a Ralph said something random and dumb line. Which, to be fair, is how some English speakers interpret it. I feel like the combination of Ralph's whimsical personality, the context of the scene, and the imprecise nature of English creates this perfect storm where inevitably people are going to view it differently. And it's not ambiguous in a 50-50 way, where we're divided completely in half. If it were that confusing, the writers would have certainly altered the wording. That instead, it's this beautiful 90-10 split, where 1 in 10 people will always interpret it as Ralph being good at sleep. They're not trolling, that's just how they happen to process the line. Okay, maybe a little trolling is going on. But combine that with the confrontational nature of the internet, and it's no wonder you get threads with hundreds and hundreds of posts about it. Personally, I've never found the original line that funny to begin with, in either interpretation. It's not that great of a joke. The debate surrounding it is infinitely funnier, that this dumb line has invited so much scrutiny. That's why I'll say something like this in a video. I admit it, I was stirring the pot. The meme is more notable than the actual line at this point. Besides, I can think of a much dumber thing we could be arguing about. That being said, the goal of the video is to get a definitive answer to the Ralph Viking question, some kind of confirmation of the intent of the joke. Mercifully, the helpful staff at The Simpsons stepped in to give us the definitive answer, the canonical explanation. What does Ralph mean when he says that's where he's a Viking? What did they intend when they wrote it? In 2014, David Merkin clarified that it is the literal interpretation, that they did not write Ralph as capable of using a metaphor. In 2020, Josh Weinstein confirmed this, that yes indeed, Ralph dreams of being a Viking. Pack it up everyone, it's finally over. Fans have been going back and forth for 2 decades about this, and once and for all, we understand what the intent of the writing room was at the time. Not to sound smug, but this thing was never in doubt. Sorry Team Metaphor, but this case is closed.